My name is Jake, welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how my wife and I are investing for our brand new baby boy. So if you've been following the channel, my wife and I, we live down in Austin, Texas. We're in our mid-30s and we're looking to retire by the age of 39. So we're looking to retire in the next 4.5 years. For those of you that have been following the channel, I've been investing for over 15 years and I created this YouTube channel to help inspire and educate new investors looking to generate cash flow or passive income through dividend growth investing. And in this video, I want to talk about the topic of investing for your kids and some of the things that my wife and I considered and why we ultimately decided to invest the way that we did for our little baby boy. So the goal of this video is I'm going to make it as educational as possible. I'm going to walk through and kind of, break down what are the different account types that we considered. I'm going to go and I'm going to show the actual investments by percentages, the growth projections, and what that's going to look like over time, get really into the nerdy nitty gritty of the numbers behind the investments, and really talk about some of the things that were important for us and why we made the decisions that we did for our little baby boy. So why don't I start with introducing Lucas himself. Alrighty, Lucas, say hi to YouTube. Here he is. Look at this little guy. He's sleepy. He just barely ate. Lucas is 3 weeks old, loving life, rocking his My Dividends Pay for This merch. For those of you marketing majors out there, you know the product placement. Look at this little guy. So we decided on the name Lucas because my wife is from Northern Germany. I'm here from the United States, and we wanted a name that both parents, both families could say very easily. And it's very possible that we go back and live in Germany in early retirement. So we really wanted a name that was easy to pronounce for both Americans or English speakers and German speakers. You know, it's really exciting to be a new dad. Obviously, it's a little bit intimidating, but I think to myself, what kind of a dad do I want to be to little baby Lucas? And then I think to myself, well, probably it could look a little like this.
I love that car more than anything that I have. Dad, what about us? You need a Q-tip?
Oh my gosh, I love that. All right, cool. So let's take a look at the first few accounts that we considered, and then let's dive into the actual investments that we have for Lucas. So the first thing that we considered was the traditional 529 plan here in the United States. A 529 plan is a tax-advantaged savings plan designed to encourage saving for future education costs. Now, this is just not tuition. This could be your books. This could be your room and board, everything related to education. But the caveat here is it has to be for education. And there's a lot of strings attached when it comes to the 529 plan. It's not really as straightforward as I was hoping. There's state-specific stipulations. So if you're in a specific state and it's state-sponsored, so there are some tax advantages that come with a 529 plan, but they're so limited and restricted on what you can do with the money. And as we all know, the government and the environment that we have here in the United States is very divided, and we don't know what education costs are going to look like in the future. And honestly, at the end of the day, my wife and I, we don't even know where we're going to be, in 20 years when Lucas is ready to go to school. It's very possible that we live in Germany. I did my master's in Germany, and at the time I was paying, I think, $500 a semester. It's free now, by the way. The semester that I graduated, it was fully state subsidized because the governments over there subsidize it. Your taxes pay for it. It's not that, it was just cheap. It was because it was subsidized by the government. And if you're from Europe or other parts of the world, this is a very normal practice. Whereas in the United States, this is not normal. It's very normal to pay thousands. You can even pay $100,000 on just a regular bachelor's degree here in the United States. So the fact that the limitations that come with this plan and the fact that we don't know necessarily where we're going to be made it a very clear choice for us to skip on the 529 plan. The second account type that we considered was a custodial account for kids. Now, M1 Finance just recently started offering this to your M1 Plus members. So this is really, really interesting if you're looking to go get it a custodial account, you can get it through M1 Finance. But essentially what it is you're investing, you're opening an account on behalf of your child, and the money in the account no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the child. So there's a few things that you have to understand. There's some pros and cons that come with it. This article here from MarketWatch is great. That the money is no longer yours, that the kids will gain control of it, right? And it's through this Uniform Gifts to Minors Act here in the United States that you are required to hand it over to your child. It is your child's money. Your kids may have to file taxes, down the road. There is an advantage while the account is growing. There are tax benefits, but only up to a small amount. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you have to read between the lines with this account as well as the 529 account. There's a lot of benefits, but there's a lot of things that you have to satisfy in order to get all of the benefits, right? And then down the road, the kids, they could be subject to taxes. And here, this is another big one here is there might be a gift tax in the future. This probably won't apply to everyone. And there's things that you can do on an annual basis, right? You can only gift up to a certain amount every year without having to pay tax without them having to pay taxes. So with all of that in mind, the different accounts, we decided for my wife and I that we wanted to prioritize flexibility simply because we don't know if we're going to be living in the United States at one point or living in Panama. We're really interested in retiring early in Panama, maybe even Costa Rica, maybe even Portugal, but very likely also in Germany because that's where my wife is from. And so we really prioritized having it in a taxable account and just a separate account in my name so that there's no regulation, there's no limitations in terms of what we can do and invest for baby Lucas. And the cool thing that we decided to do was through M1 Finance, there's multiple sub-accounts that you can have in your main account. And each one of these accounts have their own tax filing, status. They get their own 1099 dividend reports that you can upload into TurboTax if you wanted. Really, really simple. But what we decided to do was open up a taxable account for Lucas. It's in my name, but we're investing for Lucas. And I want to walk through that whole process with everybody and kind of share what we decided to do. Similar to my cash flow portfolio, this portfolio is going to act very similarly. What we're going to do is we're going to dollar cost average into this portfolio on a weekly basis. So in M1 Finance, you can go over to the transfer sides and you can go to your rules and you can see, okay, the different amounts that we're going to be transferring into Lucas's account on a weekly basis. And so what we're going to be doing, at least for the foreseeable future, things could always change, but for now, we're going to be investing $25 every single Monday for the next foreseeable future, let's say 10, 20 years. So once those $25 are deposited into his account, M1 Finance will automatically invest into his underweight holdings. Because we have the auto invest set on, it will then automatically invest into his underweight holdings. And let's take a look at the different holdings that we have for Lucas. In Lucas's portfolio, we have 3 ETFs and 1 individual company. The first ETF is SPYG. This is the Spider S&P 500 Growth ETF. This is a hyper growth ETF. The second ETF that we have is from Vanguard, the technology ETF in VGT. And then the third ETF is the total stock market from Vanguard in VTI. And the last holding that we have here is Disney. Now, Disney is a bit of an emotional, purchase from our side. I have it set at 10%. This may change over time, but for now, I'm keeping it at 10%. And I'm excited as Lucas gets older to help educate him about personal finance and use Disney as an example, as a company, because he's going to be exposed to Disney from a very young age. He's going to watch Disney movies. We might take him to Disneyland later, once he gets a little bit older. But I'm excited to use something that he understands and he knows and teach him about personal finance. And that's one of the big reasons why we have Disney in the portfolio as well. So if we go over to the research section of the Lucas pie here, you can see the historical performance. If we would have invested $100 exactly 5 years ago, this portfolio would be up over 208%, not considering the reinvestment of dividends. It has a small expense ratio, it has a small dividend, and you can see how the portfolio is set up. Now let's take a look at some of the numbers and what it's going to look like over time as we dollar cost average into this portfolio. So as you can recall, SPYG was at 35%, VGT at 35%, VTI at 20%, and Disney at 10%. If we look at the total return year over year since January 1st, 2005, I like looking back 10, 15 years because the further you go back, I believe it's more representative of the actual historical performance, and it also includes down markets as well as bull markets, bull and bears. So if you look at SPYG, the historical performance has averaged right around 10%. VGT has averaged right under 15%, VTI a little over 10%, and Disney a little bit under 14%. Now, if you wanted to do this yourself, I'll leave a link to the way that I get these. I've shared this quite a bit on my channel, but if you wanted to take a look at it, you can go to DQYDJ, you can go to the ETF return calculator, and what this does is it looks at the total return of the historical return, including the reinvestment of the dividend. So this is the total return. If you just go to Google or Yahoo Finance and you look at the ticker, it's not accurate because it doesn't factor in the reinvestment of dividends. So if you're ever pulling the historical returns of an investment, I would highly encourage you to use this website. There's no affiliation. It's a great website to calculate total returns. So if we look at the historical performance of VTI, it's just been right above 10%, as we mentioned. But there's also a separate calculator for regular stocks, not just ETFs. So you're going to want to use the other website for this. For the regular stocks, you can go down here and you can see, for example, with Disney, the total return of Disney since 2005 has been just under 14%. Now we know that historical returns are no guarantee of future returns, but I think the further you go back, the more representative and the more accurate you can assume in terms of what the potential return could potentially look like in the future. So that's how we got these numbers right here. Now, the next thing that we have to do is we need to take the weighted average total return. Because the portfolio is not all just in one ETF and there's multiple variables, we're going to take the average total return. So if we look at the total year over year return of this portfolio, it's 12.2%. Now you might be asking yourself, well, Jake, what kind of a wizard are you? How did you figure that out? Very, very simple. There's a formula that you can use. It's right here. If you want to do this for your own portfolio, pause the video, take a look at this formula, and you can calculate weighted average returns. So now that we know that this portfolio is going to return about 12% every single year in terms of a total return, what is that going to look like over a 10, 20, 30-year time period? Because we're just looking at the total return and we're not really interested in the dividend is kind of that icing on the cake. But for this portfolio, we're not really investing for the dividend cash flow. Because we plan to liquidate or sell this portfolio in 20 years or in how many years, we want to focus on the total return and we want to grow it as fast as we can with the time that we have. Like, for example, let's say in 20 years, let's say Lucas wanted to go on, go study abroad somewhere. He needed money and, we wanted to help him out with that. What we would do is we would take part of his portfolio, we would liquidate it, and we would use that money to help pay for him to maybe go to school abroad, or maybe he had a big expense. We wanted to help him on a used car or whatever it may be, or maybe a down payment on a house. Maybe he gets married. There's so many different things. Long story short, this portfolio for Lucas is a portfolio not dedicated on dividend growth, but on total returns so that we can help Lucas in his life down the road. So what is his portfolio going to look like over time? So we have the $5,000 initial deposit, and because we're investing $25 a week, times 52 weeks, that means we're investing $1,300 every single year. So $1,300 over 20 years, let's just say in 20 years, just curious to see what it's going to be in 20 years. And then here with the total return, we take the 12.2, right? Remember the 12.2 from the weighted average return. So if we plug in the 12.2%, it's going to give us a future balance of $174,000. And the really exciting thing about this is the blue right here represents the principal, what we're investing on a annual basis. The green represents the growth of the portfolio over the next 20 years. And this is what we call exponential growth. And this is the power of compound interest. Because this is just an irregular account, we want to focus on the growth of the portfolio. We don't really want to be burdened with the taxes from the dividend in this portfolio. And that's why we really focused on dividend growth ETFs and a growth company in Disney. Now I want to take just a second and walk through what's in these ETFs that we have here. So with SPYG, this is the Spider S&P 500 growth ETF, and it's weighted by market cap, but also 3 growth factors. For example, you have the sales growth, the ratio of the earnings change to price, and the momentum. So this right here, that's really what it's looking at in this ETF in terms of the weighting of the different holdings. But if we go down here and we take a look at the top holdings in this ETF, the top 10 holdings are weighted at over 49%. So this is heavily weighted in the top 10 holdings. The largest holdings are going to be Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and Alphabet. Like these are just, the largest organizations, the largest growth companies in the United States. Now, no one truly knows what the market is going to look like in 20 years. I believe that growth is going to continue to outpace true value, your General Electrics of the world over the next 20 years. Who's going to be the winner? I don't know. I don't know if PayPal is going to outpace Microsoft or if Tesla is going to outpace Alphabet or Google. I don't know. And the reason why I love investing into high quality ETFs with low expense ratios is I don't have to have all the answers. The ETFs do it for me. The ETFs are self-cleansing. If, for example, Facebook were to be, faced with a scandal and their stock were to go to zero, I don't carry all the risk. And over the next 20 years, I have no idea what the market is going to do, and no one truly does. And so that's why I really, really like focusing on ETFs in my, portfolios that I have for, my Roth IRA, for example. I just have ETFs in there. And so for me, it's easier for me to sleep at night knowing that this is a passive investment. It's sitting in the background and I'm just focused on weekly basis. How do I get those $25? How do I invest the $25? And then I let the ETF do the rest. The other ETF here from Vanguard, the VGT, this is my favorite growth ETF. I don't talk a lot about my retirement accounts. It's something I'll probably do more in the future. In my Roth IRA, this is my largest holding by far. I have about 50% of my Roth IRA in VGT. I have about 25 years before I would ever access my Roth IRA. 50% of my portfolio is in VGT. So let's take a look and see what is in VGT. With VGT, it is just focused on technology, information technology. It is more heavily weighted in the top 10 holdings at 56%. Apple represents about 20%, Microsoft 16%, Visa, Nvidia, MasterCard, PayPal, Intel, Adobe, Cisco, Salesforce. These are all amazing companies. And as I mentioned before, I don't know who's going to be the winner. I don't know if Salesforce is going to outpace Nvidia or Visa, or if Apple is going to have a scandal and their phones start exploding in people's hands and their stock goes to zero. I have no idea. Because I don't know what's going to happen in the future, I absolutely love holding high quality, low expense ratio ETFs in my portfolio, in my Roth IRA, and also now in the portfolio here for Lucas. Going forward, occasionally I'll update everybody on how Lucas's portfolio is doing, maybe some adjustments or updates that we've made over the years. But really the goal for this portfolio is to set it and forget it. As I mentioned, with this portfolio, I have the main holdings here. I am so confident in these holdings that I can just, set it up and then just forget about it. The only thing that I really want to focus on with this portfolio is making sure that I can invest those $25 on a weekly basis. And so I am more focused on how do I make $25 versus do I have the right holdings in my portfolio? For the next 20 years, I don't foresee changing this portfolio hardly ever. It's really just going to come down to how do I cut my expenses? How do I stay out of consumer debt? How do I make more money so that I can invest more into Lucas's portfolio? Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. If you do want to support my wife and I, and you do want to support Lucas, I'm going to leave a link in the description below if you do want to purchase merch. All the merch sales that you purchase from the side, I will then put directly into Lucas's portfolio. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next video.
You know what? I think we're gonna be friends. Can everyone say hi to my friend? That's crazy. I just wanted to say thanks. I'm glad you came along, partner.